And welcome back to Watchbox Studios and Watches Tonight. I'm your host, Tim Mosso. Thank you for joining in far and wide, getting up early, staying up late, and joining in the live chat. We set a record for live viewers last time. I plan to try at least to top it. Tonight, we're pitting Patek against FP Journe in a which would I take format, busting luxury watch myths, because of course, and making a roll call of luxury watch scandals, because there's a surprising number of them, while debating the end of gold watches. All of this and viewer wrist shots feature on Watches Tonight. Remember, guys, the folks who pay my salary, thewatchbox.com, no better way to buy, trade, or sell your watches. Specifically when you want to sell. We pay cash, we pay fast, we are 24 hours a day global, and we make it a no-brainer. Join me on Instagram. It's like the Kiss Army, but quieter and with less face paint. I'm trying to hit 50K in 2K19. I'm up to 21K. We are accelerating on a daily basis. Pick up your phone, open a different window, and follow me because I have video reviews of watches posting daily. Today I posted to GO. Yesterday I posted to Vacheron. What will it be tomorrow? Join me and find out. And I will reward you because I want you to win my Rolex Milgauss. Well, mine, in a matter of speaking. It's well, not brand new, but like new, with full boxes, papers. It's gorgeous, immaculate, green crystal, orange accents. It's got everything except your wrist. Guys, enter to win it because we're announcing next Monday our first ever international eligibility raffle. Win the 116400 GV. I want it to go to a YouTuber. Now, viewer wrist shots. Win the Milgauss, this could be you. Ben C. of Amsterdam is on the road with bike and JLC Reverso Grand Sport Auto, the first ever automatic Reverso. Russell K. gardens with greatness, and his Patek Philippe 5370-piece split second during a gardening day. Richard C., a friend from South Florida, is in harmony with his VC Harmony Dual and a personal favorite of mine, Jaguar. I'm considering an XKR SS as a next car. Abdul R. shares his vintage 1970s Fortis at home in Germany. Guys, send your wrist shots to mondaymailbag@thewatchbox.com to see your analog on my digital. C's Van Bruggen has a question for me. And by the way, guys, if we can get that center monitor working again, that'd be awesome. But C's has a question for Tim. Tim, pick your favorite Patek Nautilus, hypothetically, as a watch purchase, or specifically a 2018 FP Journe Octa Sport Yellow. Okay. Let's talk about these two pieces because I think people know the Nautilus line pretty well historically. The FP is probably a little bit less familiar. But first I want to give a shout out to our friends. Abdul is in the chat box from Germany. I can see Tim Mosso's sunglasses. They are now sentient. Robert Fletcher joining in from San Francisco on the left coast. And Darren Hu joining in from Toronto in the Great White North. Ziggy saying he's gardening with a Patek. 0 F's given. That's a fact, but Russell is a connoisseur. And I can see Denny T is joining from Romania. Welcome, Denny, and thank you so much. Okay, the FP Journe in this hypothetical, which, by the way, I love. Let's get the picture of the Journe back up. 2018, there was an escalation to a 44mm format, and the dial changed from a rather tepid grayscale set of options to an absolutely lurid, I'm going to use their own words, bright yellow. What is it? Well, it's lacquer fundamentally. But it has incredible presence, as the numerals on the dial are actually solid blocks of superluminova with 3 dimensions in height, and then they have wonderful black outlines so they pop against the yellow base. It's a lovely look, and again, we've gone from 42 to 44, but the watch is almost like a 70s style lugless thing with integrated bracelet. It feels very Gerald Genta, and it wears just as well. So it's not like a 44. I can handle this one easily. It also has an epic aluminum movement. Let's talk specs. Bridges and plates in aluminum. That is to say, a very rare execution. It's also exquisite. With a 160-hour power reserve, it's objectively a great watch. Even if you only wear it occasionally, it will stay topped up. It's a timepiece that FP Journe itself has assured me you can take swimming. So while it's not robustly water resistant, it's swimmable, and that's enough for me. I don't dive deep. Superb and comfortable on the wrist because of that integrated titanium bracelet with rubber bumpers. This one is $36,000 US. So that's our price point. Establishing the FP is important because we're going to jump to a Nautilus and prices on those are crazy. So my favorite Nautilus personally is the late great 1998 to 2005 3710 1A. does this watch have it all? It does have a nearly 42mm stainless steel case, a wafer-thin monoblock that is 3700 single-piece construction stainless steel case. So it's not built like the 5711, it's built like the original 3700 as patented by Gerald Genta. 120 meters water resistant. It also features a Patek Philippe power reserve complication never again used on a production Patek watch. Both the swoosh and the indicator hand on that power reserve move independently relative to each other. And it was the first ever complicated Nautilus made in 1998. That is the first Nautilus that had more than just a date window. Now, here's the problem, and you saw this coming. These sell for between $60,000 to $70,000. Full boxes, papers, original invoice. You might even see one of these hit $80,000. So, is it more than twice the watch that the FP Journe is? No, to me it's not. I'm not an FP Journe fanboy. You guys know that well. I clash with Brian on an almost weekly basis over love or lack thereof for the Journe brand. But I respect them. This is a rare case with that FP Journe yellow dial, if we could pull that back for those just joining us, where I actually love the watch. I love how it looks, I love how it wears, and I love its mechanical tech and spec. Plus, it's a modern watch. It's not some precious thing that you feel you're almost obligated to act as a caretaker for the next generation. So that Nautilus, it's such a milestone piece, and I hate to say it, but an investment. I would almost feel bad boogering up the case, bezel, and bracelet on something that's never going to be made again. Whereas on the Journe, you can have that case refinished or a part replaced if you booger it up. So, because I love the Journe, because it's about half the price in the real world, and because I feel it's just more wearable as a modern build watch, I'm going with the FP Journe right here, and that's a little bit unconventional for me. I would also say this. Do you like that Nautilus bi-element power reserve? Because a pre-production steel 1970s Aquanaut prototype, a 5060A, just went onto the block at the Antiquorum Geneva sale with that same power reserve. Now, the thing's a prototype. You know that because it says prototype on its dial. The estimate was $50,000 to $80,000 US, and you better believe it busted that number in a big way. The darn thing hammered for over 400 grand in US dollars. So, if you missed that opportunity, maybe a 3710 actually looks like a pretty good deal. Jumping into the chat box, I can see Denny from Romania saying FP Journe looks very sporty. I can see Richard Combs saying the FP Journe is very light on the wrist. And I can see right here, we have Brick Lane kind of going a little off topic saying, I prefer Longa over FP Journe or Patek Philippe. True, but if you want a sports watch, you're going to be hard pressed if Longa is your choice. Although steel is possible. It exists. It's just not common. And right here, Roger K asking, did you see the Patek Aquanaut prototype sold for 401,000 Swiss francs? You better believe it. And now you just saw it again. Okay, jumping into our next topic, because we kind of got to do this, I had a request to revisit my Mythbusters segment for watches. So, Mythbusters 2, we're calling this Mini Mythbusters because we're just busting 3 myths. The Kraken, as far as I know, not real, but I hope it is. Now, first myth, platinum watches are more expensive than gold because platinum is more expensive as a commodity than gold. Historically, there was some truth to this. At most points in history, platinum has been worth more than gold. If we go back to May 2008, so we jump back 11 years, you'll actually find that at the time, platinum by the ounce was selling for $2,008, and gold was selling by the ounce for about $879.50, which is to say, platinum sold for a huge multiple above gold, and historically, that's sort of the pattern. But something started to change, and the metals started to converge after that, and around December of 2015, gold overtook platinum in commodity value, with the result that today, as of today, the last I checked, an ounce of gold was going for $1,296 and platinum for $858.64, which is to say, on a pricing basis, it's been a long time since a platinum watch's raw materials have cost more than gold. So why do they still cost more? Well, there's a good reason for that, and it's because platinum is a beast to work. Guys who make cases out of platinum perennially wear out their tools because you have to make so many second passes, because platinum is so soft, it heats up, it deforms. There's a lot of fine work in creating and then hand finishing platinum cases and watch parts, and they do wear out tooling. Watch refinishers hate them because when you try to restore the finish of a platinum watch, it'll do things like bubbling, it'll deform, it'll melt and flow. I know one refinisher who has literally built his career on fixing damaged platinum watches that other refinishers have boiled. So that's why there is still a substantive basis for platinum watches costing more, even though platinum itself now costs far less than gold. Myth busted. Okay, here's a big one and a great one. GMT first designed the Royal Oak for Bulova, the American entry-level watch brand, before he gave it to Audemars Piguet and sold it to Piguet in 1972. Well, this is an easy mistake to make because a Bulova version of the Royal Oak was available during the 1970s. And given the fact that Bulova had mass market penetration, mass market advertising, a low and accessible price point, and very few people were aware of the then obscure and absurdly priced steel sports watch from Le Brassus, folks remember over 40 years later that Bulova, whereas from the time they might not have been as aware of the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak. But the fact remains, the Bulova was an unauthorized knockoff of the AP. Bulova could, so it did. At no point did GMT offer that design lawfully to Bulova, nor did Audemars Piguet say, it's cool, rip us off to no end. So, myth busted, GMT did not offer the Royal Oak to Bulova before AP, even though they existed in the same 1970s time frame. Jumping into the box right here, we have a question from Dave the Watch Guy asking, hey Tim, would you trade a Rolex Explorer on a Glasuta Pano Inverse? Would I trade a Rolex Explorer? Are we talking the 42? Because I love the 42 Polar. I would say no, I wouldn't on the Glasuta, and here's why. The Rolex is a more versatile watch. You can swim with it. It's well loomed. It's versatile enough in that it's thin, though broad, to wear under a cuff as your dress watch. And with the second time zone, it's a practical travel watch if you happen to be a world wanderer, and a great business watch if you happen to have associates in difficult time zones and you need to remember when not to call them at 4 a.m. So I would actually keep the Explorer purely on a merit basis. I would not be one to say keep it because it's a Rolex or keep it because it's steel. Keep it because it's a great watch and it'll do more for you. I can also see TL is joining in from Toronto. Abdul saying Bulova had some hype in the 1970s. That's a fact. And I can see Ball Y saying the new AP 15500 is perfect with the new movement. That's right. It features the 4302 movement, which is a new, properly sized, manufactured 70-hour AP in-house caliber. I really like the 15400 certainly, but I really liked what the 15500 did to improve the dial. We don't need to advertise the watch to the guy who already owns it. We don't need to know it's automatic. They also cleaned up the dial and put in a movement that's finally equal to the stature of the Royal Oak. So for me, I'm all about the 15500. Ball, great point. Right here I could see bump, 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 bump. We have Giuseppe joining in with a nice emoji, and he's joining in from Richmond, British Columbia. Thank you, my man. BS saying that is a blatant ripoff. Edward Ledden saying, I've lost interest in Audemars Piguet. Edward Ledden, why is that? Out in Sweden, AP no longer gripping you? Please tell me in the chat box. I'm doing my best to interact. I'm trying to make these shows more interactive to engage with you guys, because why do live if I don't bring the audience live onto the stage? This is your show too. Okay, myth. You'll see this all over the internet on fora, far-flung. 100 meters isn't sufficient for a dive watch. I've seen this written and repeated across the internet, supported only by anecdotal accounts and people who more or less feel, 100's not enough. But do you really need a deep sea to go diving? Fun fact, the deep sea, tested 25% over its dial rating, is actually tested to 16,000 feet before it leaves Rolex. That's what you're getting for your money. But I digress. Early Rolex Submariners, like the 6536 Small Crown, did feature professional diving status and 100-meter ratings, and you better believe that people used those in the line of work back in the late 1950s. In fact, today, In the present, we have a definition that delineates what a dive watch is and what its minimal rating should be. We have a helpful definition, courtesy of the folks at the International Standards Organization. It's the 6425. And I quote, passed in 1996, a watch designed to withstand diving in water at depths of at least 100 meters and possessing a system to control the time. They're not talking about Doc Brown's DeLorean there. They mean a unidirectional rotating dive bezel. So the ISO recommends that if you do have a 100-meter dive watch, that appropriate activities would include water sports, recreational snorkeling, and swimming. So it is a hardcore diver? No, it's not a hardcore diver, but it does meet the definition. Other criteria also apply, to be sure, but using 100 meters as a litmus test to disqualify a dive watch is illegitimate. That said, not every 100-meter watch with a rotating bezel is an ISO diver, so be sure to call ahead, and I'd ask the brands, not the boutiques, because boutiques never know, whether the watch is an ISO dive watch, even if it looks and is rated as a diver. Jumping into the box right here, I have a question from Deconstructed. Do you think the VC Overseas will ever reach the Nautilus or Royal Oak status? I think so. Remember that the Overseas is only 23 years old, whereas the Royal Oak's been with us for over 40 years and the Nautilus for over 30 years. I think it's important to, actually, over 40 years. They're both over 40 years old, my bad. Here's the thing. I think the Overseas has just become a pure product since 2016, which means display case back, manufacturer movement, Geneva hallmark, a lot of added value. I believe after another generation, we might see the Overseas finally on par, but a lot of that's going to come down to how well Vacheron as a whole rebuilds its brand. And that is really going to determine the fate of all those watches, including the Overseas, that are made by Vacheron. I could see right here, Brick Lane saying, Ball, I agree, I would have loved it in a 39mm case. He is not a fan of the new 41, which is stuck with us for the 15500 Royal Oak of 2019. Pilot Style 123, Tim, 30,000 for Moritz Grossman. Why should I not get a Longa instead? Because they're really nice folks. I spoke to their CEO, Christine, and their chairman, Theo, at Watchtime LA. They are watch enthusiasts. Christine is a watchmaker. She loves what she does. She went independent from Longa in 2008 when the world was imploding because she wanted to make a German watch according to her own ideas about aesthetics, uncompromising finish, engineering, and they have a sense of humor. That's something else you won't find at Longa. They'll do base metal watches. They'll do dial side visible escapements. They'll do custom dials. Theo, the chairman, is a watch collector himself. And he actually had his 6-year-old's drawing of a megalodon put on the dial of his own Moritz Grossman watch. A piece unique with a kid's scribble of a shark. That's the kind of thing they will do. That's the kind of thing Longa never will. And that's why I would pick Moritz Grossman, because their finish, their quality, and their engineering means no compromise vis-a-vis the House of Richemont and Longa. All right. Jumping in, Dustin Van Patten, giving a shout out. Hey, Tim. Hey, Dustin. Welcome to the game. And jumping right in, Chris Morgan, do you think two-tone will make a comeback? I think two-tone will make a comeback, but in two ways. One, on a steel watch, you'll see gold features on dials. This will become more and more common. So not two-tone cases and bracelets, but you'll definitely see a steel watch with gold on the dial. Think IWC Portuguese 5007-4, and you know exactly the aesthetic. Two, I think we're going to see a lot more rose gold and steel. Millennials supposedly are into two-tone, but I think what defines their embrace of two-tone has been their embrace of pink, rose, or red gold plus steel. So I think it'll come back as a niche. I don't think it'll be as small as pocket watches, but I don't think it will be as big as blue dials. Somewhere in between. All right, let me opine before we move on from our myths that if you want to avoid both Patek and Rolex waitlists while still owning a core model from one of these brands, go for the eye-watering Platinum Daytona. Here's the thing. For less than you'll pay for a used Nautilus, and $20,000 less than this watch's $75,000 retail price, you can buy one in the mid to low 50,000s and get the coolest Daytona ever made. These are available pre-owned right now, or if you want to buy new, they're in dealer cases. So for me, the answer to the FP Journe or the Nautilus is actually this. And I know, you ask me, do I prefer A or B, and I answer C. But it's my show, I can do what I want. All right, jumping into the box right here. scandals and watches. It seems like we have a lot of them. And no, we're not talking about poor old Jack Profumo and the 1950s British spies and sex scandals involving lurid details of swingers parties and Russian espionage. No. We're talking about luxury watches and scandals in the present day. Just this last week, and this is what actually brought about the idea for this segment, ex-FIFA, that is, International Football President, Sepp Blatter, who actually ran FIFA during the 2014 Brazilian World Cup, told the New York Times that FIFA is impounding and refusing to return his 80-watch collection, which it had confiscated. Quick review. In 2014, the World Cup was hosted in Brazil. So, naturally, the Brazilian Football Association gifted 65 Parmigiani watches worth an average of $25,000 apiece to FIFA officials and National Football Association presidents and brass during a pre-World Cup FIFA Congress in Brazil. Standard operating procedure. After all, this is FIFA we're talking about. Now, a U.S.-based corruption investigation uncovered this handoff, and a lot more, to be fair, and police action ensued. FIFA was forced to recover the watches from people who really didn't want to give them back. A few folks claimed outright that they never received the watches, right? About 6 said that they lost the watches, and I would imagine they lost the watches in their personal safes. But in any case, 48 watches were recovered. And I have to say, all of this obscures the very best watch story of 2014, which was the Bulgari Octo by Retro Brazil. Stainless steel, 100 meters water resistant, ceramic bezel, integrated strap style bracelet. The watch had a lovely Champlavé by Retro jump hour dial with cold enamel. This was as good as it got in 2014 for niche style watches. No one remembers this because of people who got free Parmigiani. I hate you, FIFA. I blame this watch's obscurity on your cupidity. Okay, now, then there was the memorable 2012 episode, if we actually rewind a little bit farther back, involving the disappearance of a $30,000 breguet, and we're going full screen here, photographed on the wrist of Russian church holy man Patriarch Kirill I, which in true Animal Farm style was photoshopped out of subsequent images of Kirill at the very same event. The breguet model in question, this is almost too good to be true. It's the Reveil du Tsar. I know. Meanwhile, back in the Kremlin, Putin spokesman Dmitry Peskov probably scored the best wedding gift of all time. Can we go full screen on this one too, guys? At his 2015 exchange of vows with his wife. According to Peskov, who was photographed at his Sochi wedding wearing a $620,000 Richard Mille RM5201, the watch was given as a wedding gift by his wife, a figure skater. And if you're going to do this, at least get a watch that's not horrendously ugly. I feel like I'm watching a Pep Boys commercial. Or the Marx Brothers. Now, except, though he claimed it was from his figure skater wife, he was actually photographed wearing the watch 15 weeks earlier on his daughter's own Instagram. Darn you, daughter. Here's the thing. All the same, I'm going to take him at his word, even though he's a bureaucrat and this watch costs 4 times his annual salary. I take him so seriously because I had no idea that skating was a racket, and he's opened my eyes to the possibilities. As soon as this broadcast is over, I'm getting myself a set of blade-shod kicks and hitting the ice, because there is money in that there business. All right, guys. I should also mention, she's a keeper. Apparently not just rich, but the ultimate enabler of the watch habit. That's quite a contrast if you're a watch-addicted husband from the usual state of affairs when you try to get watches and go over budget. No comment. And just so you don't think I'm beating up on the Russians, this is all in goodwill and all in good fun. I'm going to laugh at us right now. We can do watch scandals just fine in the US of A. We have the absurd Fat Leonard scandal, which is truly American in scale and as over-the-top as Robosaurus tearing apart and then igniting with fire an entire automobile. How over-the-top was this multi-million-dollar Navy contract scam? Well, let me preface it by saying when I was in the Navy, my CO often said one of my goals during my tenure in command is to stay off the front page of the Navy Times, because it's a bad thing, just like being on the cover of Sports Illustrated and the Sports Illustrated curse, but whereas you get on the cover of Sports Illustrated for doing good things, you mostly get on the cover of the Navy Times for doing really, really bad things. And this is a scandal built around a 350-pound Malaysian national nicknamed Fat Leonard, who ran one hell of a racket servicing Navy ships and apparently a lot more in the Far Eastern Pacific. So this involved up to $200 million in graft, Ulysse Nardin watches given to multiple Navy officers, by the way, there were dozens of indictments, as free gifts. I never got that lucky when I was in the Navy. I had to buy my watches. There were also orgies. There were skyscraper penthouse parties that apparently spanned entire days, diets that consisted entirely of whole roast pig and Dom Perignon, and all expense-paid vacations to places that also included all of the above, including the Bacchanalia. All of which is to say, if you're going to talk about just one watch scandal today, clearly it's the Fat Leonard scandal. I thought that as a non-combatant during my Navy time, I had a desk job. I thought I was doing really well. Apparently, some guys did even better. Okay, jumping into the chat box tonight, I can see Mark S. saying, Tim is red baiting. Don't forget, I just slated the U.S. Navy, and I love the U.S. Navy, so I'm trying to be an equal opportunity offender, okay? My red stars and my blue stars are all in alignment tonight. Jumping into the box, we have Birkin joining us from Turkey. Thank you for staying up late with me from Turkey. Are you on the Thracian side or the Anatolian side of the Bosporus? Let me know. And right here, we have Wisdom BOP commenting Vostok. And right here, Adam Silverstone, Sea Dweller 43 all day. Even when we're not talking Rolex, we're really talking Rolex. Okay, this is sort of our main feature, although we had so many tonight that I didn't want to dwell on it, but when you talk about the end of gold, which has been a multi-century watch trend, gold has been dominant for a long time. That sort of has to be the main story of the show. Every once in a while, true durable change hits a consumer industry. In the auto space, for example, you're starting to see it in Asia, you're seeing a lot more of it in Europe, but here in the US, SUVs have taken over. We're on our way to seeing cars, once dominant, once the whole market, become maybe 25 to 20% of the market. Everything else will be trucks. And it's only really happened since 2014, so sometimes fickle tastes can swing quite quickly. In the watch space, pocket watches between the end of the First World War in 1918 and about 1938 completely lost the market. Entering the 1940s, the vast majority of consumer watches were wristwatches. Even, and by the way, that's a wonderful Patek 972 that you can still buy new. Pocket watches didn't vanish, just like cars aren't going to vanish, but consumer tastes changed. Even in the post-quartz crisis recovery of luxury wristwatches, pocket watches never came back in strength. We also see changes in styles over time. Recall that during the 2000s, small watches basically went away. And while I do think that the excesses of the 2000s will be pared back, we've seen watches shrink since then, we're never going back to 33 to 35 millimeter men's watches, not in the mainstream. All of which brings me to my point tonight, which is that I believe we are beginning to see the end, and I mean the terminal swan dive, of the gold watch, the mainstream man's gold watch. It's been a long time in coming. Think about it. The first gold watches emerged in Southern Europe during the Southern Renaissance in the 15th century. Those were the first portable watches, and they were gold. So yellow gold really only started to lose favor in the early 2000s. I think we are seeing an acceleration right now, because you have to consider current circumstances. Right now, globally, despite doubts, growth endures economically. The U.S. economy is red hot. Japan has been doing better than it had been, and it's actually picked up as an importer of Swiss watches. Traditionally important, it's gaining momentum. We've also seen that consumer sentiment in China has been a lot more positive and upbeat than we'd suspected, and economic indicators are beginning to back that. So we are looking at fairly good times for watch manufacturers. Historically, these have been the kind of markets where watch brands launch gold watches, they launch platinum watches, they launch new watch model lines exclusively and initially in precious metal so that they can make maximum profits early. Traditionally, you only see the steel versions coming along as model lines age and sales slow down, and the brands need to drive volume, or alternatively, during really tough times when brands can't sell gold and platinum watches. Instead, right now, what we're seeing is guys with platinum watch money throwing it at marked up and waitlisted steel sports watches for the most part. We are seeing collectors with the money to buy whatever they want, deciding that they instead want steel Nautilus and GMT Rolex. They are the ones who are actually saying, regardless, they'll pay anything to get steel, titanium, and tantalum watches that they think are cool, even if it means paying more than you'd pay for gold. This is a paradigm shift. This is something you don't expect to see during healthy economic times for the watch industry. And consider how the practice has changed. Let's look at Rolex as an example. In 2005, we had the first ever ceramic bezel super case Rolex GMT Master. We got it in gold, and only gold, and you had to wait until 2008 to buy the watch in full steel and only steel. Now in 2007, Rolex released its monstrous complicated Yachtmaster programmable countdown regatta timer. It was only available in gold. You wouldn't be able to get that watch in steel, only steel, until 2013. Look at 2008, the next year. Rolex launched a new Submariner. A Rolex Submariner, new super case, first ever white gold option, first ever blue bezel with a blue gloss dial. But all of these firsts obscured the fact that you wouldn't be able to get that watch only in steel until 2008. So here's the thing. The Sky Dweller, 2012, precious metal only. You'd have to wait till 2017 to get mostly in steel. Consider how we've changed in 2018. Rolex launches a new GMT Master, the next generation watch that replaces that 2005 generation, and they launch it in steel right out of the gate. Instant gratification, in a matter of speaking. You get the steel watch, the one you really wanted, right out of the first Baselworld for this new model. That's extraordinary, and that is something we have not seen in a really long time. Consider last year's, or I should say this past Baselworld's most surprising Patek Philippe. It's not a Nautilus, it's not an Aquanaut, it's not even a sports watch. It's the 5212A. You could call it the Calatrava Weekly Calendar, because that's basically what it is. Consider how rare it is for Patek to launch a new mass market steel dress watch. You really have to turn back the clock almost to the 1940s, when for war shortage reasons, steel watches predominated in Patek production. You don't find this. You have to go back to 1999 and the ladies' 24, back when steel was being offered because women saw it as more of a fashion accessory than a timepiece, and they weren't willing to pay precious metal prices. And that's a quartz ladies' watch. This is something truly new in the modern era for a men's Patek dress watch. Remember, when the 5170 chronograph arrived in 2010, it was usually, as Patek practice, in yellow gold. Yellow gold for the first couple of years. 1998, its predecessor, the 5070, it arrived in yellow gold first. All of which to say is we may look back at the 5212A, the Calatrava Weekly Calendar from 2019, and say that was the vanguard of a new generation of steel Patek Calatravas. I do believe we'll see it expand to the Patek Philippe dress watch line. It will no longer be a matter of the 20% of steel Pateks being Nautilus, Aquanaut, and the 24. Jumping into the box right here. Robert Fletcher asking, Tim, where do you see two-tone in this discussion? I talked about it a bit earlier. I think two-tone with rose and steel is going to be a niche that endures. It'll be a bit more popular, I think, with my generation, but I don't think it's going to get much farther than that. I don't see it supplanting steel in any way. I see it eating into, if anything, the previous market for all gold timepieces. And I can see we've got Ted D joining in from Kakadu National Park, and EJ Gallo saying yellow gold Rolex is hip-hop. And Wisdom saying that Patek looks sexy in gray tones. JC, Tim, Death of Gold, come on. This is top ticketing the steel market, pets.com. I'll be honest, pets.com is an instructive example. That said, I'm willing to bet on steel sports watches from Patek and Rolex outlasting the .com bubble. Jumping to Vacheron. Consider Vacheron over the last 3 years. They're already where I think Patek Philippe is heading as a big three holy trinity Swiss dress watch specialist. Look at where they've been. 2016, the long struggling precious metal Key to Lille arrives in stainless steel. Suddenly the price is right for the model, and this model, which never had momentum, suddenly has it. 2017, you see the coolest watch of the year from Vacheron, the Historique Triple Calendar 1942, launched in stainless with a Corne de Vache case. Previously only available with a chronograph in precious metal or the limited edition Hodinkey series. So to see a series production, unlimited steel Vacheron, not just the strongest watch of the year, but probably one of the most popular watches they've offered for the last 3 model years, that's a sign of things to come. Confirmed in 2018 with the arrival of the 56 collection. Right out of the gate, the 56 was available in gold, rose, or in steel. No need to wait. Vacheron realizing how important it is to have steel watches available immediately if you don't want a new model line to die on basically on delivery. You're dead on arrival if you don't launch a new model line, dress watch or sports watch in stainless steel. 2019, how about Grand Complications? How about the Overseas, launching the Tourbillon? This watch in 2009 would have been launched in precious metal only. Today, when Vacheron launches a complicated watch, a Tourbillon Overseas, you get it in steel and only steel right out of the gate. Cartier, too, and I actually included them as the thumbnail image because Cartier is riding a high. The brand is strong right now, mostly because they've been buying back and destroying yellow gold watches that are unsold, and they've been doing gangbusters with the new steel Santos. The Santos was launched in 2018 as a steel watch, a sports watch, an all-arounder. This model you see right here launched this year with a loomed dial, so now it is truly a sports watch in every way. Remember that since 2015, when Cartier quietly buried the Cartier fine watchmaking high horology collection and said, we're done with these. Models in the pipeline will finish, but we're done. We're doing $5,000 to $15,000 watches. They've had great success with that, mostly because watches in that style and price range are going to be steel watches. So Cartier, also on the vanguard. Look at the most debated, lambasted, and controversial new watch of 2019, the Audemars Piguet Code 1159. How could they immediately have improved these watches? Cut 5 figures off the price and give it to us in titanium or steel. That would have solved a lot of problems right out of the gate. Fix the dial details, give them to us in base metals. I actually asked the former US CEO of Audemars Piguet last year why they don't just do a blue dial tantalum watch and pick up the wait list for FP Journe. And he scratched his head and he said, that's a good idea. Well, he's gone. They didn't do it. All I can say is this should have been a steel series before the gold. AP could have done itself a huge favor, and AP, it's not too late. 2020 beckons. Now consider where the independents are already. Laurent Ferrier, based on my observations, I think Laurent Ferrier may already be a majority stainless steel brand. I think that they are probably making more steel than any other metal and maybe more steel watches than every other metal. Contrary to popular belief, with FP Journe, let's jump back to that Octa Sport. FP Journe is known as a precious metal watch brand, rose gold and platinum, right? But if you add up the numbers I know they make of the line Sport, which is titanium, and the Chronomètre Bleu, which is tantalum, I would say 1/3 to 1/2 of FP Journe production is actually not a precious metal, but a base metal. They see the potential and they're jumping on it. They're capitalizing. Look at all of the other independents. From Cary to Moritz Grossmann, titanium and steel are becoming more and more common. Heck, from Cary to HYT, you can get your watch from an independent brand sometimes custom made in steel with no precious metal price premium. And I think that is the future. And that is why I believe in a generation, yellow gold watches might be as niche as pocket watches. All other independents are getting on board with the majors. Objections? People ask, what about East Asia? Well, I admit East Asia is still a bastion of yellow gold watches. There's no doubt that the number one market for yellow gold today is going to be mainland China. And by percentage of sales, it runs away with the title. Yellow gold is still popular in Singapore, in Hong Kong, in Japan. It's not dead. It's important to note this. But I do believe that in the watch industry, as in the luxury industry generally, trends blow from west to east. And just as we've seen vintage Ferrari markets pick up in Japan and mainland China, previously in China they said, well, it's a used car, I don't want it. Just as we've seen pre-owned pick up in Hong Kong and Singapore, and now making inroads into the watch market in China, mainland China, pre-owned, it's now a thing. I believe we will see trends in white metal preference and base metal preference eventually find their way to the Middle Kingdom. Now, what about dress watches? I believe that Patek and Vacheron are already paving the way. We will see dress watches routinely in steel, and I think Rolex is going to help to change the paradigm, because I do believe we are imminently going to see steel or titanium Cellinis. Imagine how badass a blue lacquer dial or blue sunburst dial Cellini in titanium would be at under $10,000. That's a watch that could legitimately give Rolex steel sports watches a run for their own money and their wait lists. What about rose gold? I think it's a younger gold. I think we'll see more rose than yellow going forward, but I do think that the market is speaking. The market doesn't want gold. It wants steel. It wants titanium. Gold writ large will be a niche unless it's white gold, which is probably going to be the preponderant gold. So it will be white gold, rose gold, and yellow gold in that proportion, in that order of popularity. Viewer wrist shots. Guys, getting ahead of the trend right now. Craig E. shoots his stainless steel Rolex Explorer 2 Polar from high above Lake Luzerne in Switzerland from a swanky resort, nicely composed. JSC shares his Omega Moon watch, Moon Phase, purchased from our own company. Thank you, JSC, for trusting us. Andrew K. of the UK watches a 100-mile sportive with his Omega Planet Ocean, a sports watch for a sporting event, and Simon H. proves the toughness of Rolex watchmaking with Roland drums, beating the skins with the sticks. That is the crescendo of this episode. Send your wrist shots to mondaymailbag@thewatchbox.com to see your watches on this box. And also, please, guys, open up another window, pick up your phone right now, follow me on Instagram. 60-second videos. The videos never stop, even when the lights go down. You can literally binge watch my Instagram account. Ultimately, enter to win that Rolex. We're announcing the winner, international winner, this coming Monday. Be in it to win it. I want it to go to a YouTuber. Comment and please subscribe. Am I right? Am I wrong? Tell me what you think about the future of gold watches. Time out, Tim out. Thanks to you, thanks to my crew, and thanks for logging on and making the best job in the world possible.